Call the Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, July 19th, 2016 to order. Mr. Secretary, if you take the roll.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Hemmons?
Here.
Commissioner Valenzuela?
Here. Vice
Vice Chair Lusk?
Here.
And Chairman Davis.
Here. Ask everybody to rise, and Commissioner Valenzuela will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
You'll place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On vacation. Yeah. The next item is the minutes of the meeting of June 14th. Any additions, corrections, or amendments? If not, I'll just accept a motion.
I'll move that the minutes be accepted as presented, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hemmons, seconded by Commissioner Valenzuela. Please vote. And that motion passes 3 with 1 abstention. Next item, public comments. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to present a matter to the Planning Commission, which is not on this evening's agenda, this is the time and place to address the commission. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to public hearing for General Plan Amendment 2014-3 and CZ 321, Camarillo Village Homes and Dawson Drive Specific Plan. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Chairman Davis. Mr. Mitchell will be providing a staff report and presentation to the commission.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. On January 22nd, 2014, the City Council considered a request for an amendment of the General Plan land use element for an approximately 23-acre site at the northeast corner of Lewis and Pleasant Valley Roads. The Council referred the request back to staff for further study, and an application for a General Plan amendment, GPA 2014-3, was filed by EJM, Arizona Commerceplex, and Hawkeye Investments, LLC on February 13th, 2014. The applicant is proposing to modify the current land use designation of approximately 19.88 acres from industrial to medium-density residential to accommodate a 285 for-sale townhome project, and approximately 2.82 acres from industrial to commercial mixed use for a 24-flat mixed-use project with approximately 12,000 square feet of commercial space. The request also includes a change in the zoning from light manufacturing to residential plan development, 15 units per acre, and commercial mixed use, as well as an amendment to the Dawson Drive area concepts and design guidelines to allow consideration of residential and commercial properties on the site rather than industrial uses. The Dawson Drive area concepts and design guidelines were established in 2010 to articulate a vision for the area and establish a set of design standards and improvements to guide the area's redevelopment. The plan was amended in 2013 to allow for development of the former Imation site with high-density multifamily housing, to link the surrounding community and contribute to the vibrancy of Central Camarillo. The subject request is proposing to amend the guidelines further to allow for medium-density residential and commercial mixed-use development on a site currently planned for business park development. Amendments to the plan include a redesignation of the subject site from industrial park, university serving, to residential commercial mixed-use village to provide housing and commercial opportunities for the nearby university. This slide shows the Dawson Drive specific plan area. Right in here is Village Gateway Project, and this is the subject site here. The subject site has been used for active agricultural production since at least 1938 and is presently used year-round for production of irrigated row crops, which is a permitted use under the M1 zoning. The surrounding areas contain developed industrial properties to the east and west, vacant property currently under development for multifamily housing to the north at the former Imation site, and agricultural property in the county of Ventura to the south. Here you can see the Dawson Drive industrial area to the west, the Constitution Avenue industrial area to the east, former Imation site to the north, and the ag land to the south. The applicant is proposing GPA 2014-3 to change the land use designation of the 23-acre site from industrial to 19.88 acres of medium-density residential and 2.82 acres of commercial mixed use. Change of Zone 321 would change the existing light manufacturing designation of the site to 19.88 acres of residential plan development, 15 units per acre, and 2.82 acres of commercial mixed use. To facilitate this change, the applicant has filed a tract map, tentative tract 5969, to create two separate parcels, 1 and 2, and further divide parcel 1 for condominium purposes. Approval of these changes would allow for consideration of pending applications RPD 196, a 285-unit townhome project, and CUP 321, a mixed-use project of 24 rental flats and up to 12,000 square feet of commercial tenant space. This large one is the townhome project, parcel 1, and to the south on the corner is the mixed-use project, parcel 2. This slide illustrates potential development of the site should the subject GPA and CZ request be approved, as well as the pending RPD and CUP applications. This site plan was utilized as part of the project description in preparation of the EIR for this GPA, CZ, specific plan amendment, and pending applications. This plan proposes for-sale residential units on the 19-acre parcel 1, with the 2.82-acre parcel 2 at the southwest corner of the site proposed for commercial village containing up to 12,000 square feet of commercial space topped by 2 floors containing 24 rental units. And this is the rental property in the commercial village down the southwest corner. The EIR's analysis included the GPA, change of zone, specific plan amendment, as well as the potential development of the site with up to 285 townhomes, 24 rental flats, and 12,000 square feet of commercial tenant space, in accordance with the previous slide. The conceptual plan, as featured within the EIR, proposes 3-story units with first-floor garages for the townhome and subterranean parking for the 3-story mixed-use village. So on the top are the townhome, conceptual townhome product, and on the bottom is the commercial mixed-use project. As indicated earlier, Environmental Impact Report 2014-2 for GPA 2014-3, change of Zone 321, amendment to the Dawson Drive specific plan, and potential future development of 285 townhomes, 24 rental flats, and up to 12,000 square feet of commercial tenant space was prepared and circulated for public review and comment in accordance with city and state guidelines. 5 comment letters from public agencies were received. Responses to comments were prepared and have been included in your packets. The EIR indicates that after application of proper mitigation measures identified in the report, all but one of the potentially significant impacts would be adequately mitigated to levels below thresholds of significance through implementation of mitigation measures. The loss of agricultural land would remain and is considered a significant and unavoidable impact. Accordingly, approval of a statement of overriding consideration will be required as part of the certification process of the EIR, which statement will make findings to the effect that the project benefits outweigh the unmitigated effect of the loss of prime farmland. The EIR analyzed alternatives that include no project, industrial development under the current general plan designation and industrial zoning, and an alternate site option. It was found that both the no project and industrial development options would delay but not reduce or eliminate the significant and unavoidable environmental impact associated with the proposed project, while neither the industrial or alternate site options would meet the objectives for the proposed project. The Planning Commission has been provided with several emails that were received yesterday and today regarding the proposal. The emails focus primarily on three issues: traffic impacts, water demand, and loss of agricultural land. Each of these items was addressed in the EIR, which indicates that traffic generated by approval of the proposed projects would be less than significant with implementation of the proposed mitigation measures. The city traffic engineer, Mr. Bill Golubix, is available to answer questions pertaining to the traffic study that was prepared for this item. In addition, a mitigation has been included that requires the developer of the site to provide 100% of the water demand for the uses approved and entitled by the city. A water supply study that identifies the amount of water required for the uses and the sources that will provide 100% of the water demand will be required prior to issuance of any permits. Finally, as mentioned previously, the subject site currently has an industrial land use designation and is zoned for industrial development. The alternatives analyzed by the EIR, no project or an industrial project, would delay but not reduce or eliminate the significant and unavoidable environmental impact associated with the loss of agricultural land. While an alternative site would not meet the applicant's objectives, nor the aims of the existing Dawson Drive specific plan, which specifies the site for development that would support the community and the adjacent university. The statement of overriding consideration that's being prepared for council consideration will also indicate that the site has been planned for non-agricultural uses for decades as an urban infill site and was previously approved for an industrial subdivision in 1991. That the small size of the site limits its viability as a productive agricultural site as opposed to the large farming operations to the south in the county of Ventura, which are protected under SOAR. And that while the site could be developed with industrial uses under the current land use and zoning, the subject GPA and change of zone will allow for enhanced consistency with the community goals, general plan, and specific plan by providing university-serving development on the site nearest the university, but still within the city boundary. Excuse me. Michael Brown, the president of Cadence Environmental, who prepared the environmental documents and is completing the statement of overriding consideration, is here tonight to answer any questions that the commissioners may have regarding the environmental document during the discussion portion for this item. Following the approval of the statement of overriding consideration and certification of the EIR by the City Council, a final EIR will be prepared, which provides the corrections to the draft EIR, comments received during the review period, responses to comments, a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and the appendix materials. The objective of CEQA is to provide the decision makers with an adequate amount of information to determine a project's impacts on the environment. The EIR accomplishes this. The Planning Commission is requested to adopt a resolution recommending a certification of the EIR. The proposed GPA, change of zone, and specific plan amendment have been analyzed and contrasted with this community goals and the goals of the general plan and have been shown in the staff report to provide consistency with both. Staff is therefore suggesting that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council certification of the EIR for GPA 2014-3, CZ 321, and companion applications. In addition, staff is suggesting that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of GPA 2014-3 to change the land use element designation from industrial to medium-density residential and commercial mixed use. Staff is also suggesting that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of CZ 321 to change the zoning designation from light manufacturing to residential plan development, 15 units per acre, and commercial mixed use. And finally, staff is suggesting that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of an amendment to the Dawson Drive, area concepts and design guidelines to allow for consideration of residential and mixed-use development on the subject site. The applicant has submitted a conceptual development plan for the site that illustrates consistency with the land use element of the general plan, as well as the proposed zoning designation and amendment to the Dawson Drive guidelines. Approval of these requests would allow for consideration of residential plan development and conditional use applications for the construction of 285 for-sale townhomes, 24 rental flats, and up to 12,000 square feet of commercial tenant space that would maintain consistency with the community goals of providing a variety of housing opportunities in a walkable, rideable environment in support of local retail and industrial uses, while maintaining community character and encouraging the preservation of the quality of life that presently exists. EIR 2014-2, prepared for the subject GPA and companion applications, determined that approval of the general plan amendment, change of zone, and subsequent development of the site has the potential to significantly impact the local environment without mitigation. However, implementation of the recommended mitigation measures included in the EIR and attached as conditions of approval to any subsequent development would reduce all but one of the potentially significant impacts to less than significant levels. The loss of agricultural land would remain and is considered a significant and unavoidable impact. A statement of overriding consideration will be required as part of the certification process of the EIR. Approval of the proposed general plan amendment and change of zone will further implement the Dawson Drive specific plan by allowing for consideration of development that promotes smart growth techniques while further enhancing the relationship between Old Town, Cayugas Gardens, and the Village at the Park neighborhoods, the soon-to-begin construction Village Gateway residential neighborhood, and the university. Finally, amending the general plan, changing the zoning designation, and amending the specific plan can allow for housing that may act as a catalyst to support the adjacent industrial uses, as well as the nearby California State University campus, all in close proximity to Old Town and the Metrolink station. The timing of any development of the site would be subject to other controls, including approval of an RPD and CUP application and the city's growth ordinance. The actual development of the site is subject to review under a residential development permit to consider the design and placement of buildings, setbacks, heights, open space, and circulation. Staff has provided observations for the Planning Commission's consideration that may be used as findings should the Commission agree with the requests following the public hearing on the items. If after the public hearing the Planning Commission supports the requests, the appropriate actions are as follows. Sorry for the size of that type. A motion to waive further reading and adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of Environmental Impact Report Number 2014-2 for GPA 2014-3, CZ 321, and companion application prepared and circulated in accordance with city and state guidelines. A motion to adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of an amendment to the specific plan for the Dawson Drive area concepts and design guidelines. For GPA 2014-3, the suggested action is a motion to adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of General Plan Amendment GPA 2014-3 to change the land use element designation of the approximately 23-acre EJM parcel at the northwest corner of Lewis and Pleasant Valley Roads from industrial to approximately 2.2 acres of commercial mixed use and approximately 19.88 acres of medium-density residential. And for CZ 321, the suggested action is a motion to adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of a change of zone 321 to change the zoning designation of the approximately 23-acre EJM parcel at the northeast corner of Lewis and Pleasant Valley Roads from M1 to approximately 2.82 acres of CMU, commercial mixed use, and approximately 19.88 acres of RPD 15, residential plan development, 15 units per acre maximum. This concludes staff's presentation. We're available for questions.
Any questions of staff at this time? Mr. Valzano?
I have a couple. You have to bear with me for a second. Steve, you mentioned that this was referred back to staff by the city council back in 2014. What was the reason for the referral back to staff? What was the justification from the council?
Oh, that's the typical process. When a general plan amendment is presented to the city council, they can either deny it outright at that meeting, or they can refer it back to staff for further study.
Okay, so it wasn't actually heard as a public hearing, general plan amendment. It was just whether or not to proceed. Okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. As far as the SOAR initiative, from what I've read, people were concerned that SOAR would have protected this land. From my understanding, because it's currently industrial zoning, SOAR wouldn't actually affect it. Is that correct?
Well, this is in the city of Camarillo, so it's not under.
It's not under SOAR anyways, because it's outside, it's inside the city boundaries.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, it does have an industrial zoning and industrial general plan designation.
So the industrial general plan designation would also, I mean, technically, they can build industrial as it is right now. They could cover that land already as it is. There's nothing that we're going to do tonight that would change that.
Correct. And there was an industrial tract approved on it back in '91.
And I saw that, and on that track, do we know why 4698 was never moved forward on? I mean, that was just a
Could have been the
developer.
economy, could have been, who knows? It was just, they applied for several time extensions, and ultimately, they just never filed the tract map, and it expired.
All right, so they technically could have built on it back then, too. I mean, this
could
is,
have back then,
okay.
yes.
And they still have the rights to if they remain within industrial?
Oh, it's expired now.
No, I mean, within the industrial, if they were to resubmit, they have the right under the industrial to build industrial as it is?
Correct.
Okay. As far as the controlling of the water, maybe just to make it clear who controls the water, because I know that a lot of people are thinking the commission has something to do with it. Could you address the process that they go through to get the water, that it's kind of to the people who had concerns about the water, whether or not this committee has jurisdiction over it?
Yeah, I could attempt to field that question. So you're correct. The decision made here by Planning Commission is a recommendation to City Council, obviously, and with the conditions identified in the EIR, the mitigation measure, that this project would be required to provide measures to offset 100% of the water demand that's brought by this project. So that would be a condition mitigation measure of the EIR that would then be placed on the project as it goes forward for review by City Council and approval.
But ultimately, the city council is the one who does the will serve letter as the sanitation
That's correct.
district.
That's correct.
Okay. I also had a question regarding, I actually have a couple regarding traffic, so maybe while we have you. As far as Pleasant Valley Road, I drove it today, well, in between the two sites, and I would probably put that signal during peak hours at an F, personally. I mean, I sat there for 5 or 6 minutes waiting to make a right-hand turn from Pleasant Valley Road onto Las Posas. I think that does qualify as an F category intersection, does it not?
If I could defer that question to our traffic engineer, Mr. Bill Golubix.
The level F or E capacity would be the summation of the different delays. Perhaps you were currently in the most burdened approach to the intersection. We look at the build-out conditions where there may be additional improvements to the intersection, and then we look at what projects contribute to those conditions. In the instance of this project, it does not add significant numbers of cars to the critical lanes at that intersection, as well as the other nearby ones. So we make the finding it has no significant impact.
We have one lane, though, technically going in that direction from that project down Pleasant Valley Road. I mean, I've asked about why we're not widening that street as it is, but without widening it, I mean, you can't say that, you know, we happen to be in the one lane. I mean, there's one lane going westbound on Pleasant Valley Road, and
Right.
that traffic technically could be coming from those homes down Pleasant Valley Road, considering they're actually on Pleasant Valley Road.
It's my understanding there are projects in line in the CIP to address some of those concerns at that intersection.
Okay. And then as far as the traffic on the 101, was that addressed in the study as far as the impacts of traffic flow, or was it just the major intersections within the city?
Regarding the 101 freeway, we looked at the traffic that this specific project would generate and distribute it to the two nearby interchanges. And just briefly, in rough numbers, this project during the morning or evening peak hour would be generating about 60 to 70 trips going to or from the freeway they'd be distributed to 2 different interchanges, well, a split interchange, one's at Pettit, the other's at Flynn. Those impacts are part of the cumulative impact to the freeway that the state and the various VCTC are trying to deal with in the future. This particular project does not make a significant impact as an individual project. It would take other findings to deny the project based on freeway impacts.
Okay. I had read in the EIR that there was around 4,000 car trips per day and something about 250 during peak AM and PM hours. How is that? I know 60 maybe going to the freeway, but 250 during the peak hours just from this project and 4,000 daily trips seems like a lot.
The 250 would be the total number of trips perhaps generated by the project. I'd have to look up the numbers. Of those trips,
Only 60 to the freeway.
to those trips, it ends up about 70 trips end up going to and from the freeway itself.
Okay. Thank you. And then I had one other question regarding, actually, I guess really it's 2 questions. And Steve, I think it comes back to you for these ones or whoever wants to, Joe or whoever wants to handle them. As far as it talks about there's no way to mitigate no mitigating conditions as far as the ag land use. And it's my understanding that maybe Oxnard or some other communities have directed that fertile soil be removed from sites such as this and replaced with not as fertile soil, so that way at least the natural resources are preserved. Is that a possibility? Wouldn't that be considered a mitigating measure?
That was discussed with the consultant who prepared the EIR, if he could maybe answer that.
Yeah, I just see no mitigating measure, and obviously I think that there's something that could have been put in there.
Good evening, Commissioner Valenzano. We actually looked at several potential mitigation measures for that and basically just found that they were not feasible for the project. So it's not as though we just said that there was nothing. For example, we looked at avoidance, such as Mr. Mitchell talked about, and basically any development on the site, even if it's a smaller amount, would reduce, would make a smaller portion of the site, if that was left as ag land, that would make it even less viable. The smaller portion is just more difficult to farm in than less viable. We looked at at conservation in outside areas, and once again, the areas to the south of the site and in other parts of the city are already preserved under the existing general plan or through SOAR and the county there. We looked at payment of a mitigation fee that is happening elsewhere throughout the state. And there is no mitigation fee program in Ventura County at this time. And so, therefore, there is nothing to participate in there. That's something that has to be adopted pursuant to the Mitigation Fee Act. With regards to the transport of soils, I was actually working on a project there in Oxnard where we did talk about that. That project has never actually happened, so that mitigation has not occurred to see. But in talking with staff through the preparation of the EIR, the main reason that was not discussed here is that all of the farmland in the vicinity of the project site here and the other farmland that's in the city that's already designated as farmland to remain as farmland is all prime farmland. So then taking the soils from this site really is no benefit to those other properties. Also, in doing that, you end up resulting in secondary impacts that would not occur with this, such as all of the grading and transport of those materials off of the site, and then vice versa, the grading and transport of different soils to this site. So that was, for that reason, the transport of soils was not recommended for this one.
Okay, and I'm glad you actually are one who worked on that project, because I had read about it, and that's why I was curious. I read your EIR, and the two combined, it didn't make sense why I was seeing it in one project and not in the other. So thank you, that does clarify that.
Very good.
And I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Mr. Hemmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question on the water issue. One part of the write-up, and I think you mentioned it too, the applicant has to replace 100% of the use of the water for the project, or the expected use of the water for the project in terms of acre feet. And there's another section of both the write-up and the EIR that I thought specified that the applicant had to replace the difference between the expected water usage for the project over and above what's used for agriculture. That, as I remember, is a little over maybe 5 acre feet a year. So I'm still confused over what the actual requirement is. Also, along with that, the water used for the ag now is under the agricultural allocation from Fox Canyon Aquifer. And I know there's a moratorium on transferring those entitlements or allotments from agricultural to the residential. So how does that affect this project? So both of those questions. You have questions.
Okay. Okay, yeah, Commissioner Hemmons. First answer to that second question, you're correct. In essence, the transfer of water rights from ag use to the developed land scenario process that used to be in effect is no longer available.
Under Measure E.
Correct, under Ordinance E, Emergency Ordinance E from the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency. And the expectation is it's highly unlikely that the situation will ever go back to the way it was, especially under the new SGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that's in place now that requires, in our area, the Fox Canyon Agency to prepare the groundwater sustainability plans, which we expect will then address how allocations will be handled in the future. So in essence, in moving forward with a project such as this, it can't be relied on to go back to that allocation transfer that used to be in place. So if that answers the second question that you had there.
Right.
And then the water demand offset, and the way the preliminary EIR was set up was that the applicant had developed and identified a certain amount, a small portion of their demand to be offset by what we're calling water conservation measures. And I believe that was that lower amount that you referred to.
That was a 5 acre feet.
Correct, right. And now moving forward, what's been identified is they will need to offset, and what it is, it's truly an offset by realizing savings, water conservation measures, or usage reduction at other locations that would be put into place through water conservation measures that would equate to 100% of the demand that would of this project.
So they'd have to offset the 40 acre feet per year then?
And actually, one of the steps is for them to provide the water supply study. Would be one of the first steps is to finalize and for city review and approval of what that ultimate demand is for the entire project. You know, we do have a number identified now, but as part of the moving forward with the project with that water supply study would identify that final number that would be agreed on of a demand that would need to be offset.
Okay. And some of the projects that you've identified that would offset 40 acre feet a year, what are some of those projects, just as examples? Because it seems like a lot of water to be offset by other conservation efforts.
Correct. And it is incumbent on the developer to prepare this water supply study with water conservation measures identified, specific measures that the city would then review and approve prior to approving the overall plan to offset that water demand. But some of those typical conservation measures that have been proven to be effective is turf removal and replacement with, say, drought-tolerant landscaping, zero-scape type approach, the high-efficiency and programmable irrigation controllers, and also irrigation systems going from spray heads to drip irrigation, those types of measures and those things could be implemented at a variety of properties, have to be within the city water service area, so we see a one-to-one offset to the demand. But for instance, the parks, schools, industrial, commercial properties that could benefit from those types of retrofits. And then also high-efficiency fixtures, whether it be toilets or other plumbing fixtures inside the businesses and residents.
Okay. And then as to the Dawson Drive concept plan that was approved a number of years ago, I guess I wasn't aware until I read this, that the LM zoning had been changed to service commercial, but you were still referring to the LM zoning, and maybe that's pretty much the same. But what were some of the ideas or the objectives behind the Dawson Drive new plan when that was implemented a number of years ago? And how does this affect those original objectives? Because this was identified as something that would either be industrial or service commercial.
Let me get back to the,
What were we trying to achieve in that design plan?
okay, the upper portion of Dawson Drive, up adjacent to the freeway, all the way down, from the freeway down to the Lewis Road Bridge, that was changed from M1 to service commercial. Everything south of the Lewis Road Bridge remained in the M1 zoning, so there is no LM in that area. The intent at the North Dawson Drive area, including the Imation site, was to make that area a little more user-friendly, to kind of create a new, reestablish a link between Old Town and the Village at the Park neighborhoods by allowing mixed use. The concept was to have like artist lofts, things like that, where artists could work in welding or heavy type industrial type art and live there as well, which would attract people who would want to come see them do their work and maybe buy some pieces of art. So that was the North Dawson Drive area. Down the southern part of Dawson Drive, the actual Dawson Drive area, and this part here, the idea was that those businesses down there were useful. That was a useful neighborhood. There were a lot of startup businesses down there, businesses that were doing really well, but they did not want to make any improvements to their sites because they were afraid that it would trigger all kinds of regulations that they couldn't handle. So the idea was to allow them to remain there and to work with them to be able to continue their uses and make improvements that would benefit both them and the city, like, for instance, new trash enclosures with covers that would keep the stormwater clean. Then we received the application for the Imation site, which converted that site to high-density residential. And so this is seen as kind of a continuation of that. When the plan was amended in 2013, it brought the design standards that had begun in the Village at the Park neighborhood into this Village Gateway project. And so that same design palette will be coming into this area also if the projects are approved.
Okay, but originally that area of the subject property we're talking about this evening was designated for light manufacturing, feeling that maybe we needed a little more light manufacturing industrial or service commercial in that area of the Dawson Drive?
The EJM site, when we changed the specific plan, we were interested in putting in things like banks. We wanted to kind of temper the zoning from industrial to more uses that would benefit the university, which was the goal. The developer wanted to make sure, which was the EJM, wanted to make sure that they had the flexibility to continue to do industrial uses if they chose to, so they didn't want to be pinned down to just doing, they didn't want to be able to not develop it with industrial uses if they chose. So that's why the specific plan as it exists today says that it's industrial park, university serving, rather than just industrial.
Okay. And did staff recommend a need within the city in terms of the size and configuration of the units and the price point that maybe isn't being satisfied with other residential projects in the city? Or was it simply the fact that it was close to the university? Was that the overriding factor in now recommending the zone change?
Well, currently, the specific plan I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the first part of your question. You're asking,
Oh, and making the recommendation to rezone to the residential, was there identified a need within the city, either from the size of the units or the price point of the units that currently wasn't being satisfied with the university? Or is it simply the fact that, it wasn't being satisfied within the city? Or is it simply the fact that the proximity to the university kind of indicated that maybe we ought to provide some more housing so it could be accessed by either students or employees, faculty members of the university?
well, the developer came to us, of course, and asked to amend the
Right.
general plan to put residential uses there. We are in support of that because it does achieve the goal of the specific plan, which is to support the university. It is the closest piece of property in the city to the university that's undeveloped, so seems to be a natural fit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Did you have?
Anything else?
That's what I was going to indicate, is that it's the last vacant property that is not developed with either commercial, industrial, or residential that could be utilized to serve the university
University.
in proximity to the city of Camarillo.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
Mr. Lusk, do you have any questions at this time? If not, before I open the public hearing, I'd like to consult with the commission, since I see there's probably a number of people who want to speak tonight, that we adopt a motion limiting speakers to 3 minutes. If I could have a motion to that effect?
In accordance with our bylaws, I'll move that we limit the speeches to 3 minutes.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion and second. Please vote. Thank you. That follows our guidelines and our bylaws, so that the majority of the commission does wish to limit the time of each speaker. I will be opening the public hearing in just a second, but first of all, some instructions. I'd like to ask each of you to give your name and address for the record. If somebody has already stated something that you agree with, just say, I agree with the previous speaker or somebody else. And please no applause or cheering after somebody speaks. Right. And we'll start the public hearing with the applicant. I have a card from Brandon Mann. Now open the public hearing.
Hi, Commission. My name is Brandon Mann with Hawkeye Investments, and I'm representing the applicant. So I would just put a card in to answer any questions. You guys went through a lot of the water issues, so if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to speak on them. Otherwise, I can let anybody else speak.
Any questions of Mr. Mann?
I think I might have one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Valenzano?
As far as, and I don't know if this is going to go to you or if it's going to go to someone else, but I have, I guess, a little heartache with the statement of overriding consideration that we need to develop this land. What community needs that aren't currently being met would be an overriding condition for taking away the prime ag land?
Well, when we first started talking about this site about 2 years ago, one of the main factors was that there wasn't any, really for sale units in the city. So we're providing 285 townhome units, which will be for sale. The second thing it was, like some of the commissioners said and the staff, is that it's the last piece of land that's undeveloped for the university. So I've had some conversations with people at the university, and since they are going to be probably in the next 5 years expanding to over 4,000 new students, they needed some form of housing, whether that be rental units or for sale, that people could purchase for their kids to move into while they're at the university here, or just some place to rent out. And also the commercial use will be serving the university. We're thinking of commercial spaces that will be serving that demographic. And it's like people have said, it's kind of the last piece of property before the university, so we're expecting that was a big draw originally, and the lack of for sale units in the city.
So as far as the use of the property, are you going to limit it to these individuals from the university, or is it open to the public? Because I don't...
It's open to the public, but we expect that the university will get a majority of the use out of the site.
I think most of them, you would agree, would probably be filled before the first or the next round of students comes through. I mean, I don't see these transitioning from university student to student, especially because I don't see them as like more of an apartment type rental unit. So why we're looking at for sale units, they have housing on site for staff that's available, and they're having a hard time filling it with staff as it is. Why do we need more of that?
Well, the university actually just asked a bunch of developers to try to develop a lot of vacant land that they have on their site, but they're very limited because they are running out of space for their staff and the students that live there too. So that's why they kind of branched out over to us.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mann. I have a card from Penny Teague. Do you want to speak?
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies that are here. I agree with most everything. It was a very nice presentation that was done. I had some concerns the other day. I got an article, an email in my mailbox, and it seemed to me that maybe the public was not clear on what was going on. I didn't quite understand what I was receiving. So first, I want to thank you all for such a good job you're doing in the planning of our wonderful city of Camarillo and of giving housing that is necessary to a variety of price points and people that are in need of different kinds of housing. So I just wanted to make that very clear that I appreciate that. So the Sustainable Camarillo movement, which would like, I guess, the city to never grow, doesn't seem to understand, according to what I read, that this project actually is a townhouse project, because what I got was something saying that it was going to be 308 apartment buildings, and that is not the case. And I wanted to be very clear with anybody who's here to support what they think is correct, that that is not incorrect. It is the townhomes plus the mixed-use area, which, of course, as was discussed, has a great concept, has a really good concept. I think the plan itself was very well thought out, certainly from the sale and use point. The university does not have enough housing for its students. I can say this as a real estate agent, although I'm here on my own accord, not as an agent soliciting business. Not to say I wouldn't like to have it, but we do need more housing, and more housing that will probably be in this price point for a variety of our citizens, to be perfectly honest. We don't have enough of it that is going on, and I personally think that this location is ideal. Okay, so thank you very much for that. There was a comment that I didn't have many signatures. I got 20 signatures in 30 minutes for this, and I'm happy to get more, but I was saving that for the city council meeting. So thank you very much for your time.
Any questions of Ms. Teague? Thank you. Next card I have is John Dempsey.
Hi, my name's John Dempsey, 2159 Derby Street. Camarillo is growing too fast, and the proposed Camarillo Homes development should not be built anytime in the near future. Camarillo, at a growth rate of 16% since 2010, is already the fastest growing city in Ventura County today. Camarillo is currently building 2,000 more homes and rentals, mostly in the Springville area. Drivers on the 101 freeway experience major backups extending well into Thousand Oaks on the daily basis starting around 3 p.m. Weekend drivers also experience major backups. In fact, the 101 freeway in Camarillo ranks as the 113th most congested freeway in the United States. Yet the Planning Commission is considering more walkable and rideable developments, which ultimately translate into more traffic. The city should wait until after the election to see if the half-cent transportation sales tax is approved. If not, the city is simply adding more vehicles to the already bottlenecked 101. The Planning Commission and the City Council continue to completely ignore the 101 freeway traffic issues and consider this to be a Caltrans issue alone. Yet the City Council, oh boy, I missed my point. But I don't know. I'm going to skip it. The Camarillo Village development will require water, but the city has no comprehensive and measurable plan to offset the water demand to these residents. The city should first define how it plans to manage water on a city level, including during periods of major droughts. I want to know how the city plans to provide water and at what additional cost to the existing residents when the Planning Commission recommends a new development. Camarillo is built on top of prime farmland, but the city should not take prime farmland for granted. Building on prime farmland transforms farmland into just any land, no better than land starting as sagebrush and rocks. Camarillo lacks designated open space areas as found in other communities. Farmland is our open space and defines the historical character of Camarillo. By rejecting this development, this farmland will stay productive for years to come. What is the overriding community benefit to this development brings to Camarillo? Building this development in Camarillo simply puts more cars on the 101 freeway, making it an even more frustrating commute for our entire community, puts more demand and increased costs on limited water resources, destroys productive farmland forever, generates more traffic throughout the city of Camarillo, puts more pressure on essential services in our community, such as police, fire, and schools. This proposed development should be weighed against the needs of the community. Building as fast as you can today because you can, but not addressing the problem it generates until tomorrow is absolutely irresponsible government. The general plan should be reflective of current needs, not those determined 10, 20, or even 30 years ago. I ask this development be rejected. Thank
Any questions, Mr. Dempsey? Please, no applause. No applause, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker card I have is James Avalone.
I didn't know I filled out the card for speaker, but I'm fairly new to Camarillo. I moved to the Leisure Village from the Valley and arrived at Paradise. But one of the things that I really was impressed with was the fact that we live so close to so many urban areas that we can utilize. We can get to downtown, we can get to the Valley, get to Santa Barbara, whatever, and still live. And it's sort of a rural community where we've got the farmland and open areas. And I, as a fairly new resident, really cherish that. Just as a side note, our first summer here, we left our windows open. We didn't run the air conditioning. It was great until we had so much dust. Somebody said, you don't open your windows when they're plowing the fields. But it's a wonderful place to live. We really enjoy it. And I cherish very much the open space. And anytime I see opportunity that open space will be paved over, it breaks my heart. Thank you.
Yeah, your card was a nonverbal one, but I'm glad we got you up here. Thank you. I'm sorry. Next speaker is Jameson Lingo. Name and address for the record, please.
2168 Dunnigan, Camarillo, California, 93010. Thanks for letting me speak tonight. I'm asking that you reject the Camarillo Village Homes. Mainly, my concern is water and transportation, like a lot of other people. And the main reason I'm concerned about traffic and transportation is because of the uncertainty that we face with solutions for both of those issues. So until we have a finalized water plan moving forward, and I think the city's doing a lot of work moving forward, but until we finalize that, and until we know what's going to happen with the transportation tax, or if we have an alternative plan to reduce traffic congestion, I think there's too much uncertainty for us to be building on open space right now in Camarillo. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Lingo? Thank you. Next card I have is Gerald, is it Marcy? I'm sure I didn't get that last name right, but.
I've heard worse.
Okay.
Anyway, it's Marcel.
Okay.
But everybody says Marcel, so it's okay. All right, so I'm representing the applicant. I wanted to make a few comments. I've heard comments about water. This project uses less water than the row crops do now, so water would be saved by this project. So also, when the moratorium is lifted, we will get our water that the row crops were using, or we're going to get 75 or 80% of that because we were approved for that. And so at some point, we won't, hopefully we won't be in a drought. We will get that water. In the meantime, if we don't get it, we're going to improve the city of Camarillo in several ways to offset the 100%, and city of Camarillo will be able to keep those improvements. And I'd like to answer Mr. Valenzano. Did I pronounce that right? You had a very good question. Why should we replace these row crops? First of all, this land is zoned industrial. It's not zoned farming. It is going to be an industrial use or this residential use, and you have to make that decision tonight, because it's going to be one or the other, because that's what it is. It's not zone farm. And so you have to decide what's going to beautify the city more. That is your entry to the city from the south. And I think this project will be definitely more aesthetic than an industrial project. This project's setbacks are 40 to 86 feet from the street. An industrial project will be much closer to the street. It won't have our type of landscaping. We're providing a Class 1 jogging trail inside of a 40-foot area, and also bike path, and it ends at a parquet that's right on the corner as you enter the city. There's a parquet and eating court there for those people who use the jogging and who use the center. Is that my time?
No, you have another minute.
Sorry. Well, I better race through this then, because the other thing you were asking, why do we need to do this? The Fairfield's doing a project next door. We're providing the roads for them to go through our project, and we're providing a signalized entry to help the traffic. And they need that, and they're already approved and they're already underway. But our project was burdened by the city to help that project, and the signalized entry will help. We're also burdened with putting medians in there and landscaping those medians, which will help traffic and beautify the area. We're also burdened with taking down the power lines all the way along that street, et cetera. I know I don't have a lot of time here, but the city will also, right now, will get, with this project, we'll get over 20 times more property tax other property, and adding in the retail element, it'll get 40 to 50 times the income it's getting now. Which I think the city could use in other ways. We will have a welcome to Camarillo sign, which is necessary there at the entry, and the entire area is just going to look a lot better.
So you could please wrap up. We'll give you another opportunity at the end to make a summary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker card I have is Merrill Burgee.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners and staff. Though I live 3 blocks up West Loop at 11 Natalie Way, I'm here because we're all in the same boat when it comes to our local groundwater. It is the reason the Fox Canyon Groundwater Management Agency was established, in fact, in order to coordinate a regional response to our critically overdrafted Pleasant Valley Aquifer. In fact, our Pleasant Valley Aquifer was specifically cited last year in August of 2015, when the state released a list of 21 California groundwater basins severely depleted by groundwater pumping. The Oxnard Plain Pleasant Valley Aquifer was deemed as critically overdrafted as those in the San Joaquin and Central Valleys. Made only worse by the drought, this is a reality which is not rectified by a few seasons of rainy weather. Under the new groundwater laws, basins that are identified as critically overdrafted must have long-range sustainability plans in place by 2020. At the annual rate of 400 units per year, the 2,000 housing units already approved and in the pipeline for water will serve letters will provide us with at least a 5-year build-out well into the 2020s. Let's wait to approve this project. Let's keep it as a zoning it is, and keep this land as productive farmland until we have the Fox Canyon Groundwater Sustainability Plan to provide facts and direction. In addition to an aquifer at risk, Camarillo's wells are being affected by salinity. This salinity impacts our water quality to the degree that we are going to spend $50 million on a desalter to clean up a pocket of brine water that is affecting 2 of Camarillo's 4 groundwater wells, a pocket of water that has a lifespan projection of 25 years. And then what? 2,000 already approved residential units is a commitment to provide this essential resource to residents forever. With the current water conservation program consisting of a toilet replacement program of 1,500 existing toilets, while at the same time adding 4,000 more toilets to our community toilet total, it is irresponsible and unfair to approve more development without a comprehensive long-range water plan vetted by both residents and agencies. It is not fair to the current residents to proceed with yet another development application. It is not fair to the developer who invests more money with this approval. It is not fair to our city to be boxed into this corner. Now, and gentlemen, you are our first line of defense. It's a time for responsible action, not for just another approval. Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Burgee? Thank you. Next speaker, Matthew Lorimer.
'98 Camino, Algarve, Camarillo, California. You know, people put labels on people all the time. I'm not a critic. I'm nothing but a citizen who's lived in this community for multiple years. I show up to city council meetings. I'm showing up here. I show up to several different things because the people are the city. And you know something? I think people have had enough building in this community. The people here have now proposed SOAR. They're moving forward. It's been enacted. Today we see another disrespectful development that is being brought in front of the city. You know, the same old arguments are always made. The people need homes. Yet if you check with these homes that are being sold currently, they're not sold to residents. A lot of people are coming out of town for that. Then they state that it's going to create jobs. Oh, really? When these people come from Sun Valley and you read the trucks, they're not local business people. And you people live in this community. And when you see them in the supermarket, when you see a woman or child, and you can't move around town because the freeway's backed up, and you want to know why you can't get to your appointment or see your loved one, and you spend your time on that freeway, how does that make you feel? It's horrible. This project is another example of just building wherever you want, disregard the people, come up with excuses, then when you don't like it, you come here and you say, we're here to help you. No, you're here to help your pocketbook. The people in this community want a place to live, and they moved out of the San Fernando Valley. They didn't want congested freeways. And by the way, you can't mitigate this. The 101 freeway is only one freeway. There's not the 405, the 118, the 5. You can't mitigate